Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's already a happy 4th of July. Just seeing you all. As you know, we're at about 6,000 feet above sea level here at the ranch. And as I meditate by the Mulherron Creek and think of the snows melting in the high mountains at Electric Peak and all coming down, and the Mulherron Creek flowing into the Yellowstone River, and ultimately that river joining with others going into the Gulf of Mexico. I always think that all of our prayers, all of our dynamic decrees, all of our calls go into that moving crystal fire water that travels all that distance and finally deposits at sea level into the oceans that go into the other oceans, all of the light that we call forth here. It's a wonderful concept, and some of you have hiked to Maitreya Mountain, and some of you have gone all the way to Electric Peak. It's just a wonderful thing to be at the top of the world, at least as high as we're going to get here, and to remember that we are giving all that we are to the whole world by this means. It's wonderful to come up to this level if you live at sea level and in a big city, and you are so aware of the effluvia of the cities and the mass consciousness. And I'm sure it's a great source of rest and relaxation as well as teachings to come here each summer so that we can all be together and make this major contribution to the world. So as we are contemplating this, I'm going to give our opening invocation, and I'd like you to offer profound prayers for the success of America. I know you come from nations all over the world, and I also know you realize that if America goes down economically, financially, in every way, the rest of the world will not really have America to pick them up, as she has done for so many decades. So this is a day of the celebration of the Declaration of Independence and what our forefathers and the early American patriots stood for, fought for. And it really touches my heart that even though America is in some respects at an all-time low in terms of drugs, in terms of the education of our children, in terms of a certain liberalness in morality and so forth, that in spite of all of that, the people of the world, especially those who are still enslaved in China and in other countries where they are simply working as laborers for the state, that all of these people all over the world, no matter how imperfect America is, they have something to believe in the spirit of freedom that is here. They have something that says, America is there, we are going to make it too, because America is there. And I know that you've seen broadcasts of people coming over in boats and crawling onto the shores of Brooklyn and in New York, and people trying to get into this country any way whatsoever, out of South America, out of Mexico, and so forth. It is that great hope and that great dream. And that dream is that the individual has the spirit of freedom and the ability to come into this country starting out as absolutely nobody, not being able to speak the language, merging with our culture, getting married, having children, sending those children proudly to school at sacrifice, and seeing their children grow up to be American citizens, themselves becoming American citizens. It's the great dream of the planet, and it's the great dream of Saint Germain. And I believe that by the violet flame we invoke and the fervor of our hearts for freedom, that we give a mighty injection multiplied by the Ascended Masters every 4th of July when we come here. And I know that what we do has made possible the liberation, the very life, as opposed to death, of millions of people. I want to thank you for going to the trouble of making the trek to be here, of spending the money to travel long distances, setting aside your vacations to come here for Saint Germain to give decrees for these millions of souls who really look to us and to America for their future, and little do they know, for their union with God and their ascension in the light. Our Father, Mother God, we call to Thee in this hour. We call for blessings upon every individual upon earth. We call for the flame of freedom to intensify now for our fervor and for the decrees that we have given. We ask that each one in the earth might know that freedom, freedom of spirit, of conscience, of soul, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. We call for that right to come together, that right to enjoy one's own religion, that right to experience freedom of the press, even when the press may abuse that freedom. Even on the foundations of these four sacred freedoms, Almighty God, we ask you to build and build again and build anew. I call to the great central sun magnet to magnetize the hearts of 5.5 billion people in this hour, to our Father, Mother God, to the central sun, to their I am presence, to their Holy Christ self. I call for a deep commitment and renewal of all of our people in the earth to remember that materialism and wealth and status and society is not the answer, but profound inner groanings of the soul in the Holy Spirit and in God, whereby we are transformed and can extend to all light rays from our chakras, the momentum of our fervor, of our devotion to all that the Masters have asked us to do. We call, therefore, for the leveling of our ambitions, that we might truly pour all of our energies into the support of Earth and her people in this hour of transition. We pray that the spiritual self-transcendence that is ordained in this hour shall not be overcome by the materialistic longings of those who prefer that status to that humble walk with God. We called for there to be cut free all souls of light who recognize with a deep conviction what are the issues of the hour and just what jeopardy there is in terms of our entering into the Aquarian age, having solved the problems of the economy, education, and all other burdens, and the oppression of people as we have seen them. Almighty God, we join together now in giving our fiats in the name of freedom for every single individual upon earth. We ask that they receive hope and faith and the promise of divine charity in this hour, and that we might fully be the instruments that God has called us to be without compromise. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Divine Mother, we give our prayers. Vajra, 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 Vajra. Together with my staff, I've been doing some research lately on the writings of Origen and new studies that have been made on Origen of Alexandria. So this is work that I'll be publishing sometime by the end of this year, and I thought you might be interested to hear it. Some of it you have heard or read, and some of it you may not have. But it's always nice to review. And in case you haven't heard this before, our beloved Linello Mark Prophet was embodied as Origen of Alexandria. And what he wrote down for us were the profound mysteries of Jesus Christ. Most of his books were burned, and so we are left to receive once again by the Holy Spirit the teachings that he so meticulously brought forth. So I open this section of my research with a question: did Origen teach reincarnation? Twins. God loved one and hated the other. Why? This question preoccupied the Apostle Paul, Church Father Origen of Alexandria, rabbis who wrote commentaries on Genesis, and even St. Augustine. Jacob and Esau were the grandsons of Abraham, born to Isaac and Rebekah. Before birth, the twins were struggling in their mother's womb. God told Rebekah that the one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger. In the well-known story, Esau, red and hairy, was born first, while Jacob followed, gripping Esau's heel. It certainly did seem as if God loved Jacob better. Jacob got both Esau's birthright and paternal blessing, although he resorted to trickery for both. When Jacob wore a goat skin to make his skin feel like Esau's, the nearly blind Isaac gave him Esau's blessing. Jacob's 12 sons went on to found the 12 tribes of Israel. Esau, on the other hand, was regarded as the ancestor of the hated Edomites, who were later conquered by David. God, speaking through the prophet Malachi, wrote, "I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau." Whether or not God actually hated Esau, Jacob was clearly the favored son. And so people asked, was God unjust? Did he just arbitrarily decide to love Jacob and hate Esau? Or had Jacob and Esau committed acts that made God choose one over the other? Some rabbis came to an unusual conclusion. Since God was clearly just, the only possible answer was that the boys had sinned in the womb. Strange as it sounds, that's just the speculation we find in a commentary on Genesis completed about 400 AD. The rabbis concluded that as Rebekah walked past houses of idolatry, Esau indicated his preference by kicking. And when she went by synagogues and study houses, Jacob would kick, trying to get out. This explanation seems far-fetched at best. Are we to attribute the differences in people's lots to their actions in the womb? Short of sinning in the womb, there are only two explanations for the Jacob and Esau story. God is unjust. The boys earned their fate in some previous existence. St. Paul toyed with the question and threw out the first option. In his letter to the Romans, Paul notes that Jacob and Esau were not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, when God said that the elder should serve the younger. Paul says, is there injustice on God's part? By no means. But Paul doesn't go on to affirm pre-existence. Rather, he sidesteps the issue. The sidestepping of the issue of karma and reincarnation has been going on since Christianity was founded. And even though we have testimony that Jesus spoke of the one born blind, who did sin, this man or his parents, these examples pointing to the fact that people believed in reincarnation, they believed in karma, because they were asking whether he had sinned in a past life. Jesus said neither, but for the glory of the kingdom of God. So then Jesus healed him. It is plain in a number of instances that Jesus taught his disciples reincarnation. They would not have asked the question had he sinned in a past life if they did not believe in reincarnation. And what I have also stated is that if Jesus was going to denounce reincarnation, he had every opportunity to do so in every public appearance he ever made. And Jesus never let an issue go by. He always corrected what was not right there at the very moment. He gave his teaching. He gave it sometimes privately to his disciples, but often in public. We know that the Old Testament is based on karma and reincarnation, but Christianity has not carried through the tradition. And so the entire world is left to speculate, make their own decision, decide whether they are going to conclude that they have lived before. Well, if no one has ever told you that you lived before, and suddenly you're going to be told that you've lived thousands of lives and may live more in the future, and you will have to balance every jot and tittle of every mistake you ever made, well, it's very easy to turn around and denounce reincarnation, because you can't imagine going through such a thing if you haven't grown up with it and taken it as a natural course of events. So, Paul sidesteps the issue, discoursing instead on God's mercy in an attempt to clear God of the charge of injustice. However, Church Father Origen of Alexandria, writing nearly 200 years later, took the argument to its logical conclusion. In so doing, he sowed the seeds of Christian debate over reincarnation for the next 3 centuries. He believed that the only answer to the question was that Jacob and Esau had a previous existence in which to earn God's love or hatred. Origen said, "We can believe God is just only if we believe that God preferred Jacob in the womb as a result of his merits in some previous life." Origen applied this same principle to all heavenly beings and all created beings. Why is one person, for instance, born with good health, genius, and talent, and another born deaf or dumb or blind? It is all based on merit for past actions. We give our children merit marks today. Perhaps we give our own selves demerits and merits as we go through life on a path of self-correction. It is entirely logical and just that the lords of karma and the law itself should keep track and encourage us to keep track so that we can monitor the strides we make. The question is, did Origen teach reincarnation or merely pre-existence? Scholars still debate the question, for it is possible to believe that souls exist before they inhabit bodies, which is pre-existence, without believing that they return to bodies after death, which is reincarnation. In order to examine how far Origen took his beliefs on pre-existence, we need to examine his life in Alexandria. Origen was born around 185 AD to Christian parents. As the oldest child, he became the head of the family at 17 when his father was martyred. A wealthy Alexandrian Christian woman sponsored Origen's studies. His studies included the Greek classics, arithmetic, and geometry. He was also exposed to Gnosticism, attending meetings with another of the woman's proteges, a teacher named Paul the Antiochian. He later studied Neoplatonism under its founder, Ammonius Saccas. However, Origen did not wholeheartedly accept either Gnosticism or Neoplatonism. He later attacked both systems in defense of Orthodox Christianity. He differed with Gnosticism because some Gnostics saw the created world as evil and believed that only certain classes of people could achieve salvation. But for Origen, the material world was simply a place contrived by God for created beings to work towards spiritual restoration. He believed that opportunity for advancement was granted to all equally. Yet Origen shared fundamental principles with the Gnostics and Neoplatonists, including the idea that the soul was created before the body. For this, as well as other concepts, he was accused of heresy, even in his own lifetime. After he finished his studies, Origen began supporting his family by teaching grammar, but soon found himself teaching Christianity to young Alexandrians seeking baptism. Until about 211, he was head of the catechetical school at Alexandria, where both men and women studied. Eusebius gives him a saintly character, telling us he lived as an ascetic, going barefoot and fasting regularly. Eusebius, who is not always reliable, tells us Origen castrated himself at this time, possibly to avoid suspicion of sexual involvement with his female pupils. However, some scholars believe this was a fiction created either by his enemies, or his friends. In any case, he led a celibate life. Origen began writing in an attempt to explain the Christian faith in the context of Hellenistic culture. Around 217, he met Ambrosius, a wealthy and cultured Valentinian Gnostic who became the catalyst for his writings. Ambrosius provided him with copyists and stenographers and kept him at work by continuous requests for clarification. Before he met Origen, Ambrosius had rejected Christianity because it didn't make sense to him. Or, as Origen later wrote to him, because your love for Jesus did not permit you to put up with an irrational and ignorant faith. Origen, always logical, made sense of it and converted him. Origen, in contrast with many of the early church fathers, insisted on a rational approach to the Bible. He came to many of the same conclusions modern man has reached today. Today, most people don't believe that all of us are descended from one couple, Adam and Eve. We think the creation story is an allegory and that many of the gospel stories are not meant to be taken literally. Origen says that the creation story in Genesis does not describe an actual event, but indicates certain mysteries. He cites the example of the devil tempting Jesus on a high mountain, and he asks, is there anyone who can truly see with human eyes the kingdoms of Persia, Scythia, India, and Parthia? If we look at the Gospels, Origen tells us we will discover that episodes which did not occur are inserted among those which are literally recorded. This is exactly what 20th century scholars have concluded through detailed analysis of Bible texts. Contrast this kind of thinking with that of Augustine, who argues that the world has existed for only 6,000 years, or with the thinking of Saints Epiphanius and Irenaeus, who tells us that paradise is a real place on earth that one can visit. That kind of thinking prevailed for more than 1,000 years. It may have satisfied medieval serfs, but it doesn't satisfy free-thinking modern man. Today we have a kind of an intellectual freedom that existed in Greco-Roman times. And if we re-examine our theology, we may find that there is more sense to be had in Origen than in the Orthodox fathers. In order to appreciate Origen's approach to Christianity, we have to understand the intellectual climate of Alexandria. By Origen's day, Alexandria had become a melting pot for culture and religion. It had the cosmopolitan air of a New York or a Paris. It was also the intellectual center of the Roman Empire. It had the best libraries and the most renowned philosophers. Here, science reached new heights, and people asked questions about religion. Few took literally the stories of the ancient gods. Instead, they sought allegory in scripture. The Jews searched the Torah, and the Greeks searched Homer. By the 2nd century, mystery cults were dominant, with pursuit of personal immortality a foremost goal. It was out of this scene that Alexandrian Christianity developed. If Christianity were to compete with pagan religion and philosophy, it must provide some good answers. Origen was the man for the task. In the footsteps of the Jewish philosopher Philo, he gave scripture an allegorical interpretation. Although Origen was born into a Christian family, he was nourished on the mother's milk of Philo, Plato, and Pythagoras. The Platonic concept of the soul was as familiar to him as breathing. He grew up with the idea that the soul is separate from the body, that she was imprisoned in the body as a result of past actions, and that she is destined to be liberated and to return to her original estate of union with the divine. Although later church historians like Eusebius tried to portray Origen as orthodox from the beginning, Pythagorean influence is apparent in his writings. He quoted from the sentences of Sextus, a collection of Pythagorean maxims with a Christian overlay, as well as the Gospel of Thomas, which had not yet been declared heretical. Origen was also familiar with Jewish traditions. He used the same kind of allegorical interpretations as Philo and also relied on rabbinic writings. From the unique mix of philosophy in 3rd century Alexandria, he derived his interpretation of Christianity, one which appealed to many of the minds of his day, among them the mother of the Roman emperor. Origen's belief in pre-existence or reincarnation may have sprung from at least 4 sources: Platonism, Pythagoreanism, Gnosticism, and mystic Judaism. Although no one knows for certain whether Origen believed in reincarnation or merely pre-existence, anyone who follows his beliefs to their logical conclusion ends up at reincarnation. There are 3 reasons it is hard to tell what he believed. First, precious little of his original writings have survived. They were either lost, destroyed, or garbled in translation. Rufinus, an admirer who translated Origen's works into Latin, admitted to changing them to preserve their orthodoxy. Today we possess only about 20 of Origen's 2,000 works, along with a few fragments of others. The second reason Origen is hard to pin down is that he deliberately kept some doctrines secret in the style of the Pythagoreans and the Gnostics. Third, Origen often doesn't draw conclusions. Sometimes he suggests several answers to a question, not indicating which he agrees with. His ideas on pre-existence are found in clearest form in his controversial work on first principles. He probably wrote it at the age of 40 for a limited audience. He intended for it to be kept secret, but copies leaked out, came to the attention of his bishop, Demetrius, and caused some controversy. In it, he explains that souls were assigned to their place or region or condition based on actions taken before the present life. He says that God has arranged the universe on the principle of a most impartial retribution, according as each one deserves for his merit to be assisted or cared for. Inequality of circumstances preserves an equality of reward for merit. At some point, while still in the spiritual realm, the created beings had committed sins. For those souls who had not sinned sufficiently to become demons, nor were they light enough to be angels, God created the present world and tied the soul to the body to punish it. Different souls receive different kinds of bodies. God didn't create from any favoritism. Origen writes, but gave people bodies according to the sin of each. He asks, if souls did not pre-exist, why is it that we find some blind from their birth, having done no sin, while others are born having nothing wrong with them? It is clear that certain sins existed before the souls, and as a result of these sins, each soul receives a recompense in proportion to its deserts. This karmic worldview is remarkably similar to that of the Neoplatonist philosopher Plotinus, a contemporary of Origen, who wrote, "All diversity of condition in the lower spheres is determined by the descendant beings themselves. It is clear from his arguments in first principles that Origen taught pre-existence, but that alone isn't enough to prove that he taught reincarnation. Yet the 13th century church theologian Thomas Aquinas observed that all who have affirmed the pre-existence of the soul have also implicitly affirmed reincarnation. It would not have been out of character for Origen to have supported reincarnation. I believe he does so by simply stating that souls have sinned before this present life. Clement of Alexandria, who headed the catechetical school before Origen, supported the idea of the pre-existence of Christ and man in his work, Exhortation to the Heathen. In another work, however, he seems to deny man's pre-existence, but a contemporary of Clement claimed that he wrote wonderful stories about metempsychosis, which is reincarnation, and many worlds that existed before Adam. In the 9th century, the church scholar Photius said that Clement taught reincarnation. Origen was also clearly interested in reincarnation. In addition to the passages in First Principles, references to reincarnation have survived in Origen's commentaries on Genesis, Matthew, and John. However, in those works he treats the subject much more cautiously. When he takes up the question in his homilies on Genesis, he does not go into it in detail, saying only, "These matters surpass both my ability to speak and your ability to hear." A little later in the text, when commenting on Jacob and Esau, he tells us that his enemies were waiting to contrive hostilities and persecutions against him for his beliefs. He says that if he touches the subject of why Jacob and Esau were different, his enemies would attack him at once. He would like to ask Jesus the same question about Jacob and Esau that the disciples asked about the man born blind. Lord, who has sinned, this Esau or his parents, that he should be born thus hairy all over and shaggy, that he should be supplanted by his brother in the womb? But Origen says he knows that if he were to ask that, immediately the Philistines would stir up quarrels and malicious charges against him. He goes on to another subject. Who were the Philistines and what were the malicious charges? The first great conflict of Origen's life arose about 215. Although precise details have not come down to us, it does not appear to have involved Origen's doctrine, but rather his authority to teach. Although he had headed the catechetical school since about 203, Origen had never been ordained a priest, and his bishop Demetrius refused to allow lay teachers to preach in church. Origen went to Caesarea, a Palestinian city that had risen to prominence after Jerusalem had been destroyed in 70 AD. The bishops of Caesarea and Jerusalem offered to ordain him and invited him to preach. He declined to be ordained, but was happy to deliver public lectures. However, Demetrius wrote angrily to the bishops and instructed Origen not to preach in public and to return home. Origen obeyed. Later, Origen was restored to his bishop's good graces, but the controversy continued. As Origen's fame increased, his bishop's desire to control him grew. Origen became known across the empire for his ability to explain the scriptures. Around 222, the governor of the Roman province of Arabia, modern Jordan, summoned him most likely to discuss the Christian faith. 10 years later, Mamamia, mother of Emperor Alexander Servius, and the power behind the throne, sent a bodyguard to escort Origen to explain Christianity to her. This also increased his prestige. As Demetrius sought to strengthen the Alexandrian church, he tried to de-emphasize the kind of speculation Origen engaged in when he asked questions like, what did the creation story in Genesis mean? Just how would the resurrection in the flesh occur? Were the stories in the Gospels meant to be taken literally? We know that Origen came under fire for his doctrines at this point, for he later compared his troubles to a stormy sea. Sometime between 231 and 233, Origen left Alexandria and went to Caesarea again. This time he allowed Bishop Theoctistus to ordain him a priest. Demetrius began an angry campaign against him, accusing him of having said the devil would be saved. Demetrius gained the support of the rest of the bishops of Egypt, who excommunicated Origen and rescinded his ordination. Origen defended himself in a letter, pointing out that he had only said the devil could be saved. As we will see, the question about the devil is pivotal in Origen's doctrine of free will and God's justice. Origen gained a respite from the controversy after Demetrius died. He decided to settle in Caesarea under the protection of the Palestinian bishops. However, Demetrius' successor, Heraclius, would not leave Origen alone either. In 247, after an Egyptian bishop, Ammonius of Thumis, entertained Origen, Heraclius convened a synod at Tumis and deposed Ammonius. Ammonius refused to leave, and the matter was settled once again by the death of his detractor. After Heraclius died, Origen successfully defended himself, but the attacks had a chilling effect on what he said about pre-existence and the nature of the soul. As a refugee from Alexandria, he knew that his position was tenuous. In his commentary on John, Origen toyed with a question of reincarnation and failed to come up with an answer, saying the subject of the soul is a wide one and hard to be unraveled. It requires, therefore, separate treatment. In Origen's commentary on Matthew, which he wrote years later when he was over 60 years old, he argues against reincarnation. Origen clearly has one eye on his potential critics when writing this. He analyzes the passages in the New Testament where Jesus identifies John the Baptist as the prophet Elijah come again, and concludes that Jesus was not speaking of reincarnation. He says, "In this place it does not appear to me that by Elijah the soul is spoken of, lest I should fall into the dogma of reincarnation, which is foreign to the Church of God, and not handed down by the apostles, nor anywhere set forth in the Scriptures." Origen also rejects the idea of reincarnation because he says it does not fit in with the doctrine of the final judgment that is found in Christian Scripture. Why? To Origen, reincarnation implies that there will be unlimited opportunity for souls to re-embody, to right the wrongs they have done in past lives. But the final judgment will end this opportunity because the world will have come to an end. In other words, there would be no physical world in which we could live in a physical body. But at the same time that Origen seems to be rejecting reincarnation, he in fact offers a way to harmonize reincarnation with the doctrine of the final judgment. He says that at the time of the final judgment, souls will receive their just deserts by being punished outside of the body. His doctrine on the post-death punishment of souls became the foundation for the Church's teaching on purgatory. Purgatory is the intermediate state after death where the soul suffers and thereby atones for her sins in preparation for entering heaven. Purgatory is an early level of the astral plane. The Ascended Masters teach that while the law of karma and reincarnation does afford opportunity for souls to reincarnate again and again to balance their karma, there is an end to opportunity. If lifetime after lifetime a soul determines to rebel against God, she will ultimately face the second death and lose her identity altogether. After reading Origen's rebuttal of reincarnation from his commentary on Matthew, one has to wonder if he is not using this double talk on karma and reincarnation to dodge his enemies, especially since he goes on in the very same commentary to again suggest pre-existence as a way of defending God's justice. He comments on God's apparent unfairness in the parable of the vineyard in Matthew 20, where the workers hired at the end of the day are paid the same as those who have been working all day. Origen suggests that the pre-existence of souls explains this unfairness, for what the souls did in the pre-existent state prior to receiving bodies would determine their reward in this life. So did he, or did he not teach reincarnation? I believe he did. We do not have recorded all of the things that Origen did, all of the people he spoke with, his disciples, where he secluded himself with them, what he spoke about that is not recorded in anything that we have left of his work. It is impossible to know the spirit and the soul of an individual entirely and of what they have gone through through a single lifetime. So perhaps he had a circle in whom he confided what his ultimate conclusions were, and perhaps he never set that forth for us. It is only natural that there would be contradictions in the course of a 50-year career and 2,000 books. Furthermore, his denial of reincarnation in the commentary on Matthew may have been a deliberate attempt to mislead. For Origen, like the Gnostics, Philo, and followers of the Greek mystery religions, believed in the practice of secrecy. Origen's predecessor, Clement, claimed to possess a secret tradition handed down from Peter, James, John, and Paul, which was meant to be reserved for the select few who could understand it. He called the secret doctrine gnosis, although he distinguishes it from the false gnosis of the Gnostics. Likewise, in Origen's work, there is a secret tradition. Unlike Clement, Origen did not claim to possess a secret tradition from a source other than the Gospels. Rather, he claimed to be able to uncover the hidden meaning of the Scriptures through knowledge and grace. Part of Origen's justification for a secret tradition came from Paul's third heaven vision, in which he heard things that cannot be told, which man may not utter. Origen believed that Paul had received the key to the mysteries during his journey to the third heaven, and that he had given them to his close disciples. You'll recall that Paul went out into the desert of Arabia, spent a long time there praying and fasting, and I have always taught you that at that time he was taken up into the retreat of Jesus over the Holy Land and prepared for his mission by Jesus. In his commentary on Matthew, Origen tells us that the man who finds the hidden meaning of the Scriptures hides it. He writes, "A man who comes to the field finds the hidden treasure of wisdom, and having found it, he hides it, thinking that it is not without danger to reveal to everybody the secret meanings of the Scriptures or the treasures of wisdom and knowledge in Christ." What was the content of the secret teaching? In First Principles, Origen gives us a hint. He lists the most important doctrines necessary to learn, among them the causes of the fall and the questions of the differences between souls and how those differences arose. Scholar R.P.C. Hansen concludes that this is clearly a list, the fullest we possess, of the articles of Origen's secret teaching. If any doubt remains as to whether Origen taught reincarnation, we can rely on Church Father Jerome, who accused him of it. He found implications in a passage from First Principles, which he said convicts Origen of believing in the transmigration of souls. There's another factor that makes me certain Origen believed in reincarnation. Two of Origen's favorite themes were, God is just and human beings have free will. He's such a modern man, isn't he? The man for today. For Origen, both concepts were linked with pre-existence. Origen scholar G.W. Butterworth believed that Origen's only motive for ascribing a pre-existence to souls was to defend the justice of God. So what did Origen see himself as? The defender of God. No one else was defending God. He was defending God. God is just. Therefore, he must have figured out this scheme in justice. And the only way to figure it out was reincarnation. Origen wrote that God's justice can only be defended when each contains within himself the reasons why he has been placed in this or in that rank of life. In other words, one person may be born a talented singer because he earned it through practice in a previous life. Another may have the desire to perform, but no talents because he wasted the gift of music in a previous life. Our responsibility for our fate leads directly into the other key concept of Origen's thought: human free will. It was on this ground more than any other that his writings came under fire. The Orthodox could not cope with the implications that even someone who had been saved could someday fall again, and that a beggar or a prostitute could rise to the level of the angels. Putting the emphasis on free will, Origen wrote, "The position of every created being is the result of his own work and his own motives." Origen believed that God had created Earth as a place for human beings to exercise free will. For Origen, there wasn't much point to a religion in which God predestined everyone, even for salvation. He wrote, "God, for the salvation of all his creatures, thus ordered all these things in such a way that no spirit or soul, nor any other rational existent beings might be forced against the freedom of their own wills in any direction other than that in which the motion of their minds might lead them, and thus the faculty of free will be taken away from them, which would indeed change the quality of their very nature." Church Father Jerome didn't like what Origen was implying. It turned the ladder of heaven topsy-turvy. Where was job security when angels might become devils and the devil an archangel? Clearly, Jerome was worried at the prospect. He fumed that according to Origen, we may have to fear that we who are now men may afterwards be born women, and one who is now a virgin may chance then to be a prostitute. I happened to meet the reincarnation of Jerome in this life. It's very interesting. I think he believed he'd been Jerome, the father. But as scholar G.W. Butterworth points out, Origen's faith is more loving than Jerome's. What Origen was teaching, Butterworth says, is that just as no limit could be placed to human willfulness and sin, so no limit could be placed to the power of God's love when once the human soul had responded to its healing and uplifting influence. How did Origen come to his conclusions about free will? For him, it was only logical. He examined the scriptures for texts supporting the doctrine of free will. For him, any text that affirmed moral responsibility, that we should do good and not evil, also affirmed free will. As historian Joseph W. Trigg writes, "Since they affirm moral responsibility, they presume that we have within ourselves the power to do good and to shun evil." In First Principles, Origen cited 12 such texts, including Deuteronomy 30, verses 15 and 19, which reads, "See, I have set before you this day life and good, death and evil. Choose life that you and your descendants may live." If God encouraged us to do good, to choose good, that must mean we have the freedom to choose either good or evil. If God has given us that freedom, then we advance or decline on our own merits. If we advance or decline on our own merits, but we are destined to return to God, then we must have more than one chance to do it. For Origen, freedom equals opportunity. If there is only one opportunity, and that often cut short, then there is no freedom. Origen examined the scriptures for clues as to God's intent. Freedom drives each individual either to make progress by imitating God or to fall back by heedlessness, he wrote. Freedom was a part of God's plan. This wasn't exactly the age of universal freedom for all. After all, did not Paul write, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom"? Origen's interpretation of Genesis was crucial to his theology. He taught that the story represented the experience of each soul. Each of us had once existed in a primordial state of divine union. Then came the fall, after which our souls were imprisoned in matter. God could not be blamed for our differences in circumstance. These were due to our own actions. God's creation was equal and just in the beginning. Origen may have been the first person to articulate the belief enshrined in the American Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. He wrote that God created everyone alike, since in him there is no variation nor change. Therefore he created all those whom he did create equal and alike. Origen defended the Christian faith to the end, suffering 2 years of intense torture under Emperor Decius. He died soon after being released from prison at about the age of 69, the closest he would come to fulfilling his dream of martyrdom. Little did he know that his careful writings would cause centuries of controversy and would ultimately be declared heretical, be anathematized or cursed, and be burned. Origen's religion was based on the individual. We rise or fall on our own merits. We are responsible for our own salvation, even though it may take us several lives to achieve it. Origen believed that you had come from God long ago, and that now you must strive to return to God by following Jesus' example. He wrote, "Not just in Mary did Christ's birth begin, but in you too, if you are worthy, is the Word of God born. If you are so pure in mind, so holy in body, and so blameless in deed, you can give birth to Christ himself." Profound words considering the century and the time. Profound words of courage by one who dared to speak out so that we might have that record such as remains to this hour. This is a record that defends what looks like a New Age religion, but a religion which is based firmly on the correct interpretations of the Old and New Testament. What became Orthodox Christianity is essentially a medieval religion of peasants and serfs. In medieval times, a person's worth was determined by his position in the group. Similarly, Christianity tells us we have no worth outside the church. Starting at the Council of Nicaea in 325 and intensifying with Augustine's teachings in the 5th century, the church created a dogma that took away our individual responsibility for our own salvation. For it taught that the church was the guarantor of our salvation. Gone was the entire framework of the Hellenistic world that Origen had inherited and harmonized with Jesus' teachings. And gone was the opportunity to understand karma and reincarnation as part of Christianity. I think when we look today at Christians and we see how the very image of the shadow of the church upon us tells us if we are outside the church, we are miserable sinners and we are going to hell. That ancient medieval doctrine is still being preached all over the world. That simply because we don't go to a certain altar, pray in a certain cathedral, and accept certain affirmations such as the Apostles' Creed, etc., that we are all going to hell. I have been told many times, even on television talk shows, by the guests in the audience, and they would shout it out, ECP, you are going to hell, and they would sit there and do that. Who has taught them such vileness? Nothing but fallen angels in the pulpits of the churches of the world, which is why we are in a tent and camped in the mountains of God today. Please be seated. I wanted to go back to the last few paragraphs that I was reading to you regarding individuals who believe that when they confess their Savior as Jesus Christ, their sins are forgiven. Jesus has carried the weight of their sin, and if they fall again, they can call to Jesus and perhaps, depending on the religion, do some penances or some practices. What I have noted in this corruption of Jesus Christ's teachings and of Origen's interpretation thereof is that people who are almost the disenfranchised, you can see them, they're hollowed out. Many of them are possessed of demons and entities, bless their hearts. And there is a very rebellious spirit that enters them when they accept this concept of Christianity. Jesus died for my sins, and they don't have to pay the price. Now, I believe that there are demons in embodiment today, or people who are so possessed with demons that they might as well be demons in embodiment, just as there are fallen angels. Demons are just a lesser rank of fallen angel. And I believe they espouse Christianity, they work their ways to the pulpits, just so they can make absolutely sure that everyone will believe that you do not have to balance your karma, because Jesus paid the price. And I see in them a tremendous anger. While they profess Jesus, they really have a tremendous anger toward God and a tremendous anger toward Jesus, because underneath it all, they are not earning their way. They are not earning their keep on planet Earth. They're not balancing their karma. They join these religions because, as I say, I believe that they are in rebellion against God, and they have absolutely no intent of balancing their karma. They refuse to balance their karma. They demand that Jesus Christ bears this karma for them, and they continue to preach it and preach it and preach it until they draw in souls of light, and souls of light will then believe this. So you observe these individuals and you see what a sorry situation it is, where fallen angels have arrived at the heads of churches, are in the pulpits, and are continuing these teachings, these practices, and so forth. And yet, those who lead them, in some instances, of course, are very fine, wonderful, beautiful, spiritual people, no matter what church they're in. But then there are others who are not so fine, wonderful, beautiful people. They are at the altars, and they are there constantly preaching, if you don't do this, 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 and this, you are going to hell. Which, of course, arrives at the situation of the breaking up of marriages and people being grievously tormented. And these people arrive at our church, and they have to go through a period of believing that they are not condemned, they are not damned, they are not going to hell, and that God has provided this path for us. So, how many of you have been in churches who have threatened hellfire and damnation upon you if you did not do thus and such? It's quite a lot of people. It isn't everybody, because the people that have seen clearly are here, and the people who have not seen clearly are still caught in that particular mess. Thank you very much. I'm grateful to have shared this with you. I am the goddess of light. I have ensconced light in my being for many thousands of years. I speak on behalf of the goddess of purity and the queen of light. And I come also for the empowerment of the fifth ray sheathed in the white fire. It is an understanding that we three, serving in the white fire of God, are able to jointly convey to you intense portions of white light at the moment of need. We also amplify and multiply mighty cosmos secret rays and the rays of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. We focus through Vajra Sattva, and we are therefore accessible to you at any moment. It seems, however, that over the years and centuries, and even in this activity, you have forgot our presence and to call to us as those who could intervene instantly in cases of serious accident, injury, chaos because of bomb explosions, sudden descent of war, etc. Do not think of us as untouchable goddesses. We move through the earth in a practical manner. The great beauty of our service is that we have so dedicated our life to the piercing white fire of God that we can deliver instantly healing through that white light where there has been disease or injury or accident or even sudden unconsciousness and all that you could describe in cases of emergency in the physical octave. We have come, therefore, to remind all students of the mighty I Am presence, that we are here and available. And secondly, we would speak to you of healing. Healing when the white fire and the emerald matrix combine, and you call upon the healing thought form. The white fire of that thought form we also embody. Therefore we may bring immediate help where there is hopelessness on the part of all. When you hear of those who come back from death, know that we are always a part of that activity. We also oversee all those in health care, from those who drive ambulances to doctors and nurses, scientists, those who do research, all those upon earth who are concerned with the health of mankind. This is quite a number, as you can realize, and we are there always. Sometimes we come dressed in nurses' uniforms, or we join surgeons right in the operating room. We stand next to them, and then we are not there, for we have placed our electronic presence over them, and we work through them. We are somewhat like the legions of K-17. And as you know, K-17 and your Lanello serve together tirelessly for the rescue of people, for the prevention of crime, and for working in every nation to discover those who are the betrayers of the nations and those who plot, riot, bombs, and so forth. We, you see, are much more in the practical vein than you have envisioned us by sentimental artists who have depicted us in such a way as to remove us far, far, far from Earth's scene. We are also there when mothers give birth. We multiply ourselves as many times as necessary, 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 times. You, of course, have been told that the meaning of the title goddess signifies that the one who bears it has internalized the light or the God consciousness of a certain materialization and spiritualization of the ray. In this vein, then, we can perform, and we do perform, as I have said. Thus, beloved, when there is an emergency of any kind, and when there is a sudden emergency, we, along with hosts of light who all come, dressed in white, with some portion of their garment tinged in green, we gather, we rush to the scene. And some of the services rendered in this nation and other efficient nations have so accelerated to such an art and a science that we can tell you, beloved, that those in embodiment who perform these services are truly not only angels serving in human bodies, but they are those who have perfected that need of the hour to tend to life in crisis. We therefore engage in crisis management, where there is a situation that must be tended to and must be resolved immediately. We are there for earthquake victims in every nation. We are there with our legions when those who are in war suffer on the battlefield. Above all, our hearts do bleed for the precious children who are maimed and harmed and killed in the crossfire in Bosnia. We are also burdened by the plight of children throughout the world, for our hearts are the hearts of mothers, cosmic mothers as we serve. We ask you then to develop the white fire that is able in your hands to turn the situations around, to develop the precipitation ray, the emerald ray, so that you may quickly anchor in the earth that which will antidote a serious situation. Next to this, beloved, we see as all important the need for the compassionate heart, the compassionate and loving heart that can identify with the ills not only that are of one's own family or friends, but identify with the circumstances of world pain, the sorrows of millions. Do not think that this is not within your capacity. Lord Maitreya has brought to you the tremendous quality of kindness and compassion. Understand then, when you are neutral to the burdens of others and do not identify with them, you are taking a measurement of yourself whereby you have a very narrow slice of life, your immediate family and friends, and those whom you know about personally. All those on the path of the Bodhisattva and of the Buddha must identify with the entire world. One way to do this is to continually make calls for 5.5 billion souls on the planet and in every nation, to continuously look at the globe and identify the people, their customs, their background, their state of consciousness, their religion, their education, the development of their heart chakras and other chakras, so that you have a sense of belonging to the entire human race and all evolutions who are tarrying here for the victory. When you yet can walk away without emotion because someone has died that you never met and never will, you have not yet reached the level of the planetary servant, or the one who would even consider to identify with the pain of all the world. When you identify with suffering universally, then you can send tremendous love to those who suffer. If you do not identify with suffering, beloved, then sooner or later you also will suffer, until your heart is no longer hard, but is softened, and until your cares are no longer your own because you have resolved your psychology, and thus you can give all that you are universally instead of only in your own backyard and neighborhood. Our specific reason for coming then is to enjoin you in the service of the Divine Mother and to join us as her heart, her head, her hands. With arms outstretched, we receive you. At this point in our dictation, we come to transfer to you the light that you are able to contain. Remember that as you approach summer solstice, you are also approaching the date of the half-yearly cycle of initiation. At winter solstice and summer solstice, you undergo those initiations whereby the lords of karma, any masters who sponsor you, will give you certain tests that are meet for you personally. If you remember that they will come upon you and that you ought to be preparing for a number of weeks before those 2 dates, you will pass your tests with flying colors, for you are always tested on that which you know. To know, to do, to dare, to be silent, to know in the body and the heart and the mind that you will to pass this test and therefore rise on the spiral of your life stream. This indeed is a cause for rejoicing. Summer solstice has come and gone, and you have rendered great service in establishing this tent site, that all might come and come together with strength for the victory. Remember, beloved, that the path is a path of testing. There are daily tests. There are final exams. Be always prepared, for you never know when this or that will creep in to take you from your seat quite suddenly. How else can we move forward with bands, legions, light bearers who would accelerate? It is true in the schools of earth, it is true in the etheric universities of the spirit of the heaven world. All must be tested, the metal must be tested to see if it is strong enough to hold for the next round of initiations. Let us then focus on these initiations as our angels come to tend each one of you to place in your causal body what are the 3 major tests that we have seen in your life streams, that are the tests of a lifetime that keep on recurring. As our angels are presenting to you in your etheric body what the 3 most important tests of your life are, so I would tell you that where you see repetition after repetition after repetition of a situation wherein you become discordant, discouraged, burdened, or simply are not able to deal with it, you ought to take note and consider whether you should be with a counselor who can assist you in overcoming that rough spot. Most people on earth, as we have calculated in surveys our angels have taken, have 3 knots in consciousness that hold them back, pull them back. These knots are so obvious right beneath their noses that they fail to see them year after year. And some pass from the screen of life in the change called death, never having realized that they missed the most obvious of matters that they came into embodiment to correct. Self-analysis is wise when it is not overdone. Therefore, seek those professionals who can assist you. Seek also counsel from your dearest friends, loved ones, family members, for they may also tell you what they may have observed. This they will always do, freely, without condemnation. Now then, see if you can identify what the angels have placed before you, and see whether those 3 points match that sense that you have had in criticizing yourself for this or that fault. For you may find that that which the angels bring to you has nothing to do with your own self-sense of condemnation. In other words, what you condemn yourself for, God may wink at, and what are the real challenges, you may have lost the point because you are so caught up in your own self-condemnation. Think then of the 3 strongest points in your life stream, where you show the greatest strength of character, the honor, the nobility, the constancy, the stick-to-itiveness. Note this because most people do have 3 points where they excel, and excel consistently and constantly, day after day, in their service, on their jobs, and in that which they give in prayer. So you see, this is something that you can lock into. This is something you can do by way of self-observing. And thus, having jumped a hurdle and another, you will find yourself at a new and fresh level for new studies and a new grade, and perhaps reception by the Mahachohan, simply by following this process. What I am saying is that you should always have 3 points of acceleration and attainment that you are working on, and 3 points to eliminate elements of character that you desire to put into the flame. If these are always with you, you will make constant progress. You will self-transcend yourselves many times over, and in the end, when you arrive at the gate, you will find that you have passed so many tests, that you have balanced karma, and you are ready to be candidates for the ascension in one of the Ascended Master's retreats. Having said this to you, I now ask you to engage in a period of silence while we 3 establish these dots. We take the dots from our causal bodies, one of each, to each of us, and then the dots that must be overcome. And we hold one for each of you. Now the clarification of the mind, the heart, the soul, and the spirit is taking place as we step up the body of the messenger and transfer through her heart chakra to your own. Piercing needle rays. These are for elevation, balance, and for seeing clearly oneself. See yourself for what you are. See yourself for what you know yourself to be, deep within. See the self, the precious self of your holy Christ self. Model your life in the footsteps of your holy Christ self. Systems are in order. That is our message. You can apply a system to most things, and by following it, make progress and learn much. I, the goddess of light, draw an ovoid around you. It is an ovoid of protection. Sustain it, multiply it with the needle rays of mighty cosmos and with the three of us. See then how the white fire is healing, insulating, self-transcending. In the light of God that never fails, we salute thee, we seal thee in the white light. O white light, serve now our best servants.
Behold, now to the watchers, wrathful judgment, say unto them, judgment, judgment. Never shall you obtain peace. I am that I am. I am that I am, I am that I am. Behold, he comes.
Oh, my dear children, hear now the words of my heart. I am your Father, ascended and free. A long time ago, I walked the hills of earth into God's heart, but not apart from thee. I am Enoch, and I walk with God. Now through the veil I come and go. Immortal friend from secret place on high, I come to help you home.
Oh, my dear Father, these are the words of our heart. We are your children, now draw us to thee. We would walk with thee over the hills of earth, into God's heart, but not apart from thee.
Let truth be your companion, be attached to integrity. Walk, my children, in righteousness. Come walk the paths of peace. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. O love the Lord with all of thy soul. O love the Lord with all of thy heart and mind, with all of thy strength, and he will make thee whole. With all of thy strength, and he will make thee whole. With all of thy strength, and he will make thee
I am come, Pallas Athena. I come in fulfillment of the law of the Lords of Karma. This is our annual report, as we have addressed you on a number of occasions. As we have surveyed the earth, we see great highs and great lows. This earth is a place varied, as you know, a crossroads. Many life streams gather here. Some come to exploit, some come to exalt. Some are selfless as they give their lives to a humanity that is downtrodden and without hope. Others pursue education. They do not include in this courses in selflessness, courses that will lead to the soul's victory even through a life of joy in the service of the Lord. I remind you that you can well conduct yourselves and have the best of both worlds, but you cannot have the best of the next world if your priority is here, in these levels of materialism and non-caring. The Lords of Karma are likewise concerned, as are other masters who have spoken to you, regarding the decline in the levels of integrity, values, honor, kindness, above all compassion as the core of service. You have here the path that can lead all to fulfillment, joy, happiness, and the ascension as well. As for those who do not see it that way, there are millions upon millions, and they may tarry in the earth until the earth itself is no more. This is a great pity. The Lords of Karma are concerned with injustice, and laws being written whereby individuals for small crimes may spend their entire lives in prison with no hope for parole and therefore little motivation to work at trades and to have hope for the future. So many young people as teens have made major mistakes. What will become of them under the present system? The rulings handed down by the Supreme Court of this nation often have merit and often do not. They are colored for many reasons, and therefore the people of this country do not always have the best that they ought to have. For Supreme Court justices are also human, and they must also be concerned of their own karma and the effects of their own decisions upon themselves. Often they do not act on behalf of those who are in the right. This is a pity. The justice system of the nation must be examined, or you will find, if this continues, that you will have so many people in jail for such long terms as to make this entire nation lopsided in favor of so many prisons and so many inmates who could be productive in society. This is a growing and major problem. Blessed ones, you have heard in recent months of individuals on death row. You have heard their stories, and it does not seem to you that they should be lawfully put to death. And yet this happens. Consider if there were not a law of karma and reincarnation, that by human justice these individuals should no longer have a chance. There are many who have committed murders and have done so premeditatedly. They, beloved, also deserve the opportunity to return and make good. As long as a soul embodies, it means that God has given opportunity, and Portia champions that opportunity. When the laws and the court systems make it impossible for individuals to pay their debts to society by keeping them in prison, then you will see that one day, if this does not change, it shall be like the storming of the Bastille, when people will become fed up with the entire system. We pray that this will not happen, and if it is to not happen, then we must have those who are servants of God and servants of mercy and servants of justice come into these fields and see to it that both lawmakers and those of the Supreme Court and those of every town and city are changed in favor of mercy and constructive rehabilitation. Life is worth something, and there are many on earth today in positions of power who have no heart flame, who do not consider that most of the people on earth have a life that is worth something. The absence of the value of human life is the crux of the concern of the Karmic Board. For where there is that absence of valuing ultimately human life, there is everything from abortion to the injustice of sentencing. There are many areas that must be looked into. So many of those who lead have hardness of heart. When it comes their turn and their life for 10,000 years of karma to descend upon them, they will try cleverly to dodge that karma, but they shall not escape. They shall not escape, and they shall indeed know what it is like to be on the other side. We, the lords of karma, depend on those who are on the spiritual path to so purify and accelerate their auras and consciousness that we may call to you at any time, and your karmic entanglements will not be able to stop you from jumping in and serving where service is needed. When you have not balanced karma, and psychologically speaking, you have many human attachments, then you are not free to move, to act, to be there where we need you. Attempt then to develop such a great heart of love that you may give that love to all who depend on you and ultimately to the world, and yet not be dependent on others, but know that some must come out from the crowd and be ready. The lords of karma are concerned about gangs, gang warfare, political parties being overtaken by gangs, and an entirely new climate in the United States based on these individuals who move in packs and are determined to defy all that is holy and good in the founding principles of this nation. We, the lords of karma, have made decisions recently whereby those who have not extended mercy must have reduced their access to mercy. Those who have not extended divine justice or human justice must have the tables turned upon them. I am Pallas Athena, and I have seen that the sword of truth, beloved, is the means whereby civilization does continue. When you visit countries where there is no truth in speech, in commerce, in the marketplace, where everything that is spoken for convenience, is a lie, you have understood that it is no longer the cosmic honor flame that governs these societies, and therefore their civilizations, their nations cannot stand the test of truth. I am a member of the karmic board, and I represent that board, and I bring to it the strong ray of truth. Each quality of each of the members does draw us back to the founding principles of life. We must stand on those principles, and we must demand that souls who have strayed from them must pay their karma and return to the mandates of God set forth by the great Manus. There is nothing left when the virtues of God are not extolled. Therefore, we are profoundly concerned, for there are liar nations and there are truthful nations, and those who are the liar nations pretend to speak the truth, and those who are the truth nations will listen to them, and because they want to hear the truth, they accept the lie as the truth. This has been going on in the East and the West for hundreds of years. It is time you realized that it is one of the techniques that have been taught for all time in warfare. You have read the book of Sun Tzu, and you know exactly what is deceit in warfare. There is deceit this day. There is deceit in the Congress of the United States and in the office of the President. And the deceit has to do with the promise to the American people that they shall have a defense, and yet they shall not have that defense, for the United States has not seen fit to abrogate those treaties which have bound the United States to not have her own self-defense. This is such a serious matter that it brings us to the very core and point of our message. By dynamic decree, by speaking out, by representing your state, your town, your government, you must demand that the elements of this ABM treaty are taken apart, and that this United States shall have the maximum defense necessary in the case of any attempt by any foreign power to bring nuclear war or a first strike attack upon this society. This is still on the drawing boards of nations, make no mistake, beloved. and it is partner nations to the United States who have a greater opportunity to be rescued by the United States in such conditions than the people of the United States themselves who do not have that defense. Blessed ones, you can look throughout history. There have always been nations, races, and peoples allied against one another. There has been war all the way back to Lemuria, Atlantis, on every nation and in every soil. The earth is blood-soaked. It is about to be chemical-soaked by these weapons of war that have grown and grown and grown. I ask you then to remember that your original Saturday night services were based upon your decrees and calls for the reversing of the tide of the momentums of world communism and world socialism and the engines of war building between the two power nations of the earth. This matter is not done with. This is not the end of it. Even if there is a merging of space stations of the United States and Russia, yet these matters are not done with. Yet there are still powers, whether they be in the top nations of the world or whether they be in those of fanaticism and those who have a vengeance against the United States and are preparing to act when the time comes. You cannot overlook this and consider that this planet is going to simply roll into a golden age. Whether or not and when that golden age comes, you must understand war must be banished from the earth, and since it is not being banished from the earth, then every nation has a right to absolute protection and absolute survival and a plan for both. And I am counting on keepers of the flame to see this, to understand this, and if you do not believe it, and if you think this is right-wing rhetoric, then think again, for it is not right-wing rhetoric. It is the truth at hand, and the government knows it, and they are still dallying about, failing to abrogate that treaty which effectively will make the citizens of the United States of America the slaves of any powerful nation that should determine to launch a first strike. Furthermore, the lords of karma assess people from all walks of life, including those who are attending this conference. And we see, as is well known in the astrology of the United States, that people come under the delusions of Neptune. This Neptune delusion, beloved, causes people to enter into denial, to not read about or work diligently about those areas in the social life of this nation and the world. Therefore, not to tackle the question of drugs, not to tackle education, not to go after the drug lords in South America and around the world, all of this is denial, wishful thinking as people enter into their so-called New Age movements and are fascinated by this and that form of psychic involvement. This Neptunian delusion, which is a national disease and has been since the founding of this nation, must be looked at squarely. There are levels upon levels upon levels of Maya, and you must see that there is Maya everywhere. And if you would see clearly and see spiritually, you must have the gifts of the Holy Spirit, pursue them, and work for them. Otherwise, this nation can easily be taken over by one way or another, whether it is the destruction of entire generations through drugs or that which we have spoken of as war. I ask you to pray for the members of this nation, and I ask you daily, when you give your Estrella calls, to always call for the clearing of the astrology of every man, woman, and child in this nation, the astrology of Neptunian delusion, so that they will have clear minds and clear seeing. Never mind that they will see horrors. Never mind that they will see reality. It is time the entire nation woke up to reality. And this is one of the greatest burdens of the lords of karma, because those who are keepers of the flame yet remain under that delusion in some cases. We ask you to work on this and strictly direct your calls to Astrea to strip from you all wishful thinking, all unsound business practices, going here, going there, investing in this and that, not knowing how to handle your money and not asking experts to help you. You must be wise. You must realize that this war of light and darkness of Armageddon has yet to be fought and won by the light bearers in every nation. Therefore see to it, for the lords of karma are concerned. The rays of the lords of karma are intensifying. As we 7 members, including Vajrasattva, come together, we now direct the 7 rays and the 8th ray into your chakras, that the chakras might have balance, be spinning correctly, and that you might open your eyes and have the strength to open your eyes as to these challenges at hand. On the return current of each of these rays, you may send petitions to the lords of karma, requests for grants, that you might achieve some breakthrough along the lines that we have discussed. The pale horse rides this day, beloved. The pale horse rides. The stench of death to come is already in the earth, for the future can be read. It can also be smelled. You know that there is a death of the soul, a death of the spirit, a death of the mind and heart. But above all, let conscience live as the inner voice of the inner man of the heart. And let that inner God presence of the Atman so sustain you that you will be the victor over death and hell. Crime of every sort is a major problem everywhere in the world. The various mafias have entered most nations. Russia is rife with a mafia, as is the United States. Asian mafias moving in, etc. Where the leaders do not have the courage to challenge them, to go after them, the nation that so allows it and endures it will rot. In some areas, citizens have rallied and seized contracts from the very teeth of the mafia. See to it, beloved, do not allow the scum of the astral plane to surface and to bleed you of the earnings of your daily bread and of the wealth of nations. Let hearts of courage consider that to deal with these matters will always require sacrifice. And there is danger, but then shall you bequeath this world to your children and leave them to tend it when it has grown to such proportions that organized crime cannot be touched. I tell you, beloved, now is the time to deal with what is right in front of you. If you cannot go out and jump into the fray, then let your fiats rise to God each night and call to K-17 and hosts of the Lord to go forth and do your bidding in these areas, and see how these individuals do not have the power that people think they have. They are empowered by demons who flee when they are about to be caught, and then they are as nothing, nothing but vegetables. Yes, beloved, if you would bequeath the world to your posterity, listen to the words of the lords of karma. Believe us, for we warn you. You know all of the good that is in the earth. It is not necessary to remind you. And we know of all the good that you have performed in magnificent service. Therefore, we must point out that which you are not focusing on. So I have done this, and I believe that you can add to this list so that major sections of specific matters may be looked into in detail. You may then create your inserts for your Saturday night services and determine that this entire movement throughout the earth shall be an army of the Lord to go after those single problems and to ram them as with battering rams until they are beaten down and you take on the next war, the next project, the next infamy that is being practiced on the children of the earth. Know then that focus is key. I ask those of you who have time this evening to come together in groups and talk about what you think are the most urgent matters in the earth, that earth might survive and the nations as well. This is time to come together to form committees, and then let the entire body of keepers of the flame use those same calls. See what you have done with a violet flame. Now let us be very specific. For there is a boring of the earth, a boring in the earth. And that boring, beloved, is creating holes and weaknesses. Therefore did the beings of light come yesterday to reinforce the very physical earth. I ask you to take off from the matters we have mentioned, form your groups, and bring to the table those statements that must be made in your fiats day after day, week in, week out, till you defeat that particular problem in your city and your nation. There is great gratitude for the work you have done on the Surya days, the Almoria days, and the Omritas days. You have won great strides in your effort. Continue. We bless you and love you and say, onward to the victory in every area of disgrace. I come to seal you and to empower you in the white light, the most powerful light of all. Therefore understand that the white light in the hand of rheolite is an action of fearlessness flame, and that emerald ray does seal it. So know the power of precipitation of the emerald ray. So understand, as you have heard from the beings of the white light, what the white light can do in so many areas of life, small and great. I am rheolite, and we come with untold legions of light. Our numbers have vastly increased as individuals from other systems of worlds and angels and those from the other side of the universes have gathered in the earth, and they come with swords, and beloved, the forces of rheolite are known everywhere. The fearlessness flame that they carry is bequeathed to all of you if you will make it your own. Know that fear is a disease that must be cast out, as else it becomes a cancer. Therefore, what do you do when you have at your disposal a sword of white fire sheathed in emerald light? Well, you go forth with our legions. You go forth and become a part of all of the legions on the 4th and the 5th rays. And then you realize how much need there is in the earth for the protection of life and for the binding of the enemies of mankind. In this moment, as K-17 and Lanello join us, we are aware of so many issues in the earth, so much darkness, so much deception and abuse, that I can tell you we could scarcely ever have enough angels to deal with every single problem that rises constantly. We then prepare you, and we offer you training in our angelic bands to become part of us, to meet where we meet, and we shall take you there, but not tell you where it is on the outer. We have a very large retreat where we train those in the mode of fearlessness. When you join the battle and must face the foes of other systems and worlds, you must have such an armor of fearlessness that you will not flinch, not from anything, beloved, that should come to deter you, your loved ones, or the entire course of the civilization of which you are a part. Many of you think that you do not have fear. I would inform you that there is